Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Stephanie Bansemer-Brown. Welcome to the show, Stephanie. Welcome to Become Your Own Superhero. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. That's a lovely intro.
Well, it's the least we could do. You are the second person with the last name Brown, or part of the name Brown, on the show. We had the amazing Les Brown, the motivational speaker, on a few short weeks ago, and he was an incredibly inspiring individual. And I'm going to say that you are along the same lines in terms of your inspiration, in terms of the short time that we've known each other. But before we get into
big
well, before we do, what about this Bansemer-Brown? Can you fill us in on the details of how about that happened?
Oh, well, my maiden name is Bennett. And I was marrying my husband, who is a Brown, and he says it's popular, not common. But I didn't want to be just a Brown. So I took on the name Bansemer, which was my mother's maiden name because she passed away. So I changed it by default. So hence Bansemer-Brown.
And she lives on. She lives on forever.
She does. She lives on, which is nice. And it had a much nicer ring, Bansemer-Brown, than Bennett-Brown.
Well, look, if you're happy with it, I mean, names are one of those things. I mean, being christened with Laban, I thought for a long time was a curse. It's an Old Testament Bible name, and it means yogurt in Arabic, which explains why I'm so cultured. But I found out in later years it actually means fight, like to show fight in the main Filipino language. And now I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna own Laban. So yeah, own that stuff.
100%.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on the show. And you're incredibly busy. You're a mum and a wife, and you are in a very senior role with the Bowel Cancer Australia.
Yes.
That's your current role?
Yes, I'm a consultant to Bowel Cancer Australia. With their marketing and PR, but I'm also an ambassador as well.
Beautiful. And why is that?
Because I've had bowel cancer. That the non-sexy version of cancer is what I've had. And I'm really passionate about making sure we start talking about our bums and poo.
Well, no better person to talk about it. And I'm totally comfortable if you're willing to share some of the background about how you got to this point, Stephanie.
100%. So I was living a very busy life. I was, head of marketing and PR for Network 10 and had been for 15 years. I'd had my son, he was 2.5, and probably 12 months before I was actually diagnosed, I was just not feeling right, and there was blood in my poo. But, as we do, we go, life's too busy and it's too important. I need to get that next series of MasterChef launched. And AFL's happening over here, and someone, some talent's being naughty that I need to deal with. So that took over my life, and I just kind of put it to the side because I'd been to the doctor, and it was a locum GP, not my normal GP at the time, and mentioned that, my bowels weren't right. And she said, oh, you've just got hemorrhoids. And at that stage, I was about 40, it would have been around just over 40. And as I later discovered, they like to put women in these little boxes. You're too young, you are female, you won't possibly have bowel cancer. So I didn't really pursue it. But luckily for me, my sister's a genetic counsellor in Adelaide.
Wow.
And she said, can you please go and have a colonoscopy for me? Which I did. And lo and behold, they discovered a tumour. And I later found out it was stage 3. But there started a very interesting journey for me. And luckily for me, a wonderful journey in the sense that it allowed me to pivot. And I didn't know at the time the pivoting I'd be doing. But as we are often thrown a fork in the road, life changes. And I'm one of the lucky ones.
That's amazing. And I don't know a lot about bowel cancer. I know that it might have been on my mother's side of the family, with some distant relatives. But was it unusual for you to pick it up at that age versus the rest of the population?
Well, as I've later, the benefit of hindsight and working for Bowel Cancer Australia now, you're never too young to have bowel cancer, and you should always look for symptoms. So if you had symptoms, there were very clear signs for me. Blood in my poo was the major one, plus my bowel habit had become quite irregular. So, we don't like talking about poo, and this is part of the reason why we need to. As females, we go and check our boobs. Men are aware, thankfully, more often now about their prostate, but no one wants to talk about their bum because there's this preconceived, notion that it's icky and, I don't know what you were like as a kid, but my mum said, don't talk about your poo, and we're really, I don't know at what point it changes. My son at 11, there is nothing funnier than a fart joke or to talk about poo. Now, he's been brought up in a house. Do you still like it? Yeah. Nothing funny about a fart joke, is there?
It's still one of life's great pleasures, I think.
Do you know what? When I'll go off to the side, but when I was going through this process, I said, I will be able to fart again, won't I? There's something, when you're in the comfort of your own home and no one else is around, there's nothing like a good fart and the rest of a good fart. But for me, it was, so women are often discounted, and especially women who've just had a child. And I hear this so much now in my role at Bowel Cancer Australia. So many women from the age of about 32 to 42, 43, I've had my last child, I've had a child, the doctor said, no, you don't have bowel cancer. And it's really frustrating because I think, if you went in and said, I've got a lump, they'll send you off for a test immediately. But what they do often, and I'm generalising, but in general, they'll go, no, they'll disprove everything else and then come to bowel cancer last, and by that time it can be too late. So, from my initial seeing a GP to when I was diagnosed was 12 months. And that would have grown and could possibly have changed whether I was stage 2 to I was stage 3 and whether I had chemo or not. And can you imagine if you were stage 3 and you went to stage 4, which often happens, and stage 4 is, it's metastasized. So we need to change that mentality and get people thinking because, it's, you're a woman, you're young, you can't possibly have bowel cancer.
Well, it's interesting, Stephanie, because I think up until maybe in my late teens, I was convinced that women neither pooed or farted. And I don't even think they went for a wee at one point. And mind you, I did think vaginas were horizontal until I was about 10 years old, I think. I don't know where that came from. Maybe some poorly made dolls when I was growing up. But I think, that, and when you look at you, Stephanie, you're a very successful woman in your chosen fields. You are a beautiful woman, if I might say. And the fact that you're able to so candidly talk about these things, I think is really empowering. And this, I think, encapsulates the whole spirit of this become your own superhero, because hopefully someone watching this will recognize something that's a little bit askew, and it doesn't have to be, blood in your stool or whatever. It might be that lump in their breast, or recognizing something, whatever it might be, and getting it checked out. And so we really thank you for doing that. And clearly you've become really comfortable doing this, which is what I absolutely adore. But in terms of the healing process, how long was that and what did you go through?
The healing process. So I embarked on chemotherapy, and I also had talking about poo. I had a ileostomy bag, which is a bag that you poo in, and that is ileostomy is reversible, colostomy is not.
Right.
And so my healing process was I wasn't quite sure what it held for me, and the thought of pooing in a bag for the rest of my life scared the fuck out of me, to be really. I can remember my surgeon saying, "You're more worried about having the bag than you are about the cancer." And I said, "I am." And I know that might seem really superficial, and looking back, but, you know, aesthetically, it is like having a bag. I once said a girl cannot have too many bags. And, you know, I've rethought that. There's one bag I didn't want. And it's not a very sexy thing. You know, you wake up in the morning and you've got this bag on you that's blown up like, you know, those little mini footballs? And it's full of gas. And you're worried you're going to roll over and it's going to pop. Having sex with that is not the best. You know, you learn to live with it and you learn to do those things. But it was a real eye-opener for me. And I, again, am lucky. And when I say I'm lucky because I caught it in time. My cancer was rectal. So it was right at a join, and I had an exceptional surgeon who managed to, you know, sew it up and allow me to go back to normal. So when I say I wanted to fart again and poo again, it's been, 8 years since my surgery, and I've only just got back to normal in terms of going to the loo. And that might seem crass to some, but that's really important. It's changed the way I think. You know, when I first had gone through chemo and had my reversal of my bag, I had to watch what I eat. I still can't eat chilies and anything too hot. But I'd walk into a shopping centre, for example, and I wouldn't go, "Where's the nearest witchery or shoe shop?" I'd go, "Right, where are the loos? I need to know where the loos are," because my bowel habits were so different. And it took 2 years for that to come back to relative normality, and really 8 years to be back to normal. I still wake in the morning and I have to go 2 or 3 times because my, you know, we're going to get really into the nitty gritty here, but, you know, where your rectum's where you hold your poo before it comes out. So that's much smaller, which means that I don't have the same capacity as others. And what I'd say to people if they think, "Ooh, I don't want to talk about poo," I can guarantee you the aftermath of having bowel cancer is far worse than looking behind you in the toilet to see whether you've got blood or going to see a doctor because your bowel habits just not the same. You know, I would give anything to have not gone through that process, and, you know, be normal, I suppose. And I'm lucky. I know women and men, but a lot of women who have a bag and they are young. Some women haven't even found a partner. And imagine them finding a partner and saying, you know, "I've got a bag." It's so many challenges. So all I can say to people is trust your gut, and if you think that you are not right, then you've got to go and see a doctor. I've kind of veered off course there, haven't I, in terms of recovery. But for me, recovery was all about, I had a come to Jesus moment, I suppose. And I worked in TV and I was made redundant in the middle of chemotherapy. Channel 10 effectively, I can't say sacked me. They did make me redundant, but there was not a lot of compassion there. I can remember being hooked up to chemo and calling the head of HR at the time and saying, my 6 months is up, but I'd like to come back in January when we start the new season. And basically he said, implied, don't think we want you back. And I feel for people currently going through COVID who have been told they've been made redundant in a really difficult situation. And that was part of my recovery process because, quite frankly, it was fucked. And although they could legally do it to me, it wasn't a very nice, ethical thing to do when you consider I'd worked for them for 15 years and I didn't work 9 to 5. I worked really fucking hard. And they didn't even want to pay for my farewell in the end. And it was, you know, it was quite hard. I'd lost a lot of people. It was a change at Channel 10 and I haven't talked about it much, but they were not very nice to me. So my recovery process was I'd lost my identity. I'd lost the things in my life that were normal. Channel 10 was something that's stable and I'd been there for 15 years. I'd had bowel cancer. My life, I at that point when they made me redundant, I didn't know whether I was going to live or die, to be perfectly blunt with you. Wow. And it made me reevaluate life. And thinking back on it, I'm actually really fucking thankful because it made me reevaluate what I actually wanted to do with my life. And, you know, my life at 10 was wonderful and I love the entertainment world, but it's a very fickle, vacuous, self-centered industry. Mm-hmm. Filled with promoting air, effectively.
I've never heard it described like that, but that's really clever. That's really clever.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, you continue. You tell me.
No. So, you know, my recovery process, I think, was, it was really important. And hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I can look back on it and go, thank God that did happen, because I don't know that I would have liked the person that I would have been had I stayed there. But at the time, they took everything away from me that I was holding on to outside of my family, and my family were very important. But, you know, I really valued my job, and what I found was my identity was wound up in my job. It was ego. I was hurt. I was angry, and I thought, God, you know, what are people going to think about it? Because, you know, I had a really high pressure, highly sought after position. And people fell off, don't you worry. All of a sudden I was of no value to them because I wasn't head of marketing at Network 10 anymore. However, what it also showed me was people within the business that I'm still friends with today that reached out, and some pretty high profile people as well that were there. And to me, I call it sorting the wheat from the chaff. You certainly see what sort of human beings care about the human rather than the position. And I would say that to anyone that's in a point of pivot, you know, we've all heard the sayings, you know, you can grow from negative situations and find the positive in things. And I'm a very positive person, and that is true, but it is also very hard to do. And you have I had some real downs in that time. And I don't think they realised what they'd done to me. And I was disappointed in a number of high-powered women in that organisation that didn't stick up for me in that time.
When you were at your lowest point, Stephanie, what were some of the things, A, that you experienced, but B, that you used to help get you out of that funk that you can share with other people that they might be able to use?
Well, I had a little poppet that was 2.5, 3 at the time, which gave me all the encouragement and, you know, requirement for me to snap out of it. You know, as many people who've had young children know, them running around, they don't really care. They don't, you know, they're there to make you snap out of it. They will make you realise what the positive is in life. And after home learning, sometimes the negative. Life's not all Instagrammable with your children, let me tell you. But for the most part, you know, I had a husband that was amazing and still is amazing. My child, so I had a family environment that really made me pop out of it. And also, I'd lost my mother many years before to ovarian cancer, and she was 42 at the time.
Wow.
And I was 3 months off 42 when I was diagnosed. So I'd already had a moment in my life that had given me, you know, I watched her die. I was standing there watching her die in the hospital, and I cared for her for 6 months, which was a pretty hard thing to do at 20. So I'd had that moment, but I had perspective, and I think when you're feeling really low, it's allow yourself to feel low, allow yourself to grieve, allow yourself not to put pressure on yourself to be this bright, bubbly human. Also, I do think that, you know, in the world of social media, and I've been at fault, absolutely, we tend to put the best bits of our life out there. And I say this to my son, you know, he sits there and he watches NBA. It's his thing. And all he watches is the YouTube clips, and he sees Michael Jordan getting every shot in. He sees, you know, Steph Curry getting every shot in and the good parts of the play. He doesn't see all the negative parts of the play, and it paints a very different picture. And I think in life, there are going to be down moments, and you've got to embrace those down moments, but finding your way out of that hole is finding something that gives you some joy, and living the experience, and knowing that even those that you might admire, or role models, or the rich or the famous, they go through it as well. It's just we just don't see it. And to understand that you know, you can allow yourself to have those down times.
That's beautiful advice, Stephanie. And, you know, having gone through my own challenges over the last, you know, 5 years, I can totally empathise with you. Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had any of the major medical ones, but I don't think it really matters what it is that's causing the great challenge, is it? It's just like, find a support network of people that properly love you and actually care about you. One of the things I like to talk about is, you know, don't be afraid to polarize the people that aren't providing any value in your life. Because the right...
100%. Yeah, I think that is a really important fact. I probably, when I was pre-this, I didn't want to offend people. In my work environment, I was known as probably being quite aggressive and fairly, you know, I was in a world of media where you had to be. But in my personal life, I didn't want to offend. I have a big birthday in about 4 days, and it's not 4-0. And for me, I 100%, I want people in my life that are going to be supportive, and that you can share and you can have robust conversation. But if people are not in my life because they enjoy our company, or you're not getting anything out of it, it's okay for them to leave, you know, your world. You know, for my friends, I've got a number of good friends, but, you know, 2 in particular, and one lives in Western Australia, and we see each other once a year, and God knows when we'll see each other in this COVID environment. And, you know, we talk 4 or 5 times a week. And we are still the very best of friends after 20 years of friendship. And my friends are my family. they are so important to me. And I think that is the other thing. They don't have to be sitting here in your world. You can reach out. You know, I've got another friend in Sydney and she's amazing. I've got another friend who now lives in New Zealand and, you know, he's fantastic. But it's okay to go through. You purge your wardrobe. I would suggest it purge those that are not there to support you and don't give you that joy. You know, I've had some friends that, oh God, every time I speak to them, I feel like my soul has been ripped out. And I feel exhausted afterwards. And it's like, I'm not sure this is working for either of us. And you can do it gently and it just happens.
Yeah, it does just happen. And I think by showing the courage to do that, what you'll then do is you'll allow the right people in your life. Because there's only a certain number of revolving sort of acquaintances or friendships that you can have. And they think from an evolutionary point of view that the maximum group number was around about 120 to 150. So, you know, if you've got the social media platform of, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 friends, you're effectively spreading yourself way too thin. And you're not able to get the reciprocal type nature of having a meaningful type relationship. And I really identify with that, Stephanie. And I love the rawness and the strength in which you talk about this stuff now, because it's really empowering. It's empowering to me as I'm 40 later this month. We share, I think you're a Gemini, I'm a Cancer. And the different kind of cancer, and you know, I'm so excited about this next decade of my life because I've started to figure some of these things out, and that's why I was so excited to have you on as a guest of the show, in the hope that you would, you know, share this story. So, you know, I'm really grateful that you've been able to be so open and honest, because it will inspire. But this isn't it for Stephanie, is it? This is, what have you got coming up in the not too distant future, rather?
Oh gosh, I'm pivoting at the moment. I've got to be really honest. I don't know what my next step is. I've been on a couple of boards, which I think is really important for me, giving back. And it might sound really cliche, I suppose. You know, I've had cancer and now I want to give back. But it truly is like that. I want to use my marketing and comms skills for good. I turn jobs away if I don't feel like I can add any value, and I need to do it for the right reasons. Now, that's not to say that I do everything with a social benefit, because, you know, I still have to, you know, earn some dosh. But, you know, I was on the board of the Cancer Council Victoria for 6 years, I think. And I volunteered to give that up because I felt I was no longer adding benefit to them. I do believe I did in the time that I was there, and helped them with their marketing, because, you know, they had a board that was very heavy in governance, which is right, but I was probably an unusual fit because I was a marketer and from comms. But giving back on boards was important, and I'm now on a board called Sugar by Half, which I know you know very well. So I'm really passionate about things that I will give back to. And I will always have Bowel Cancer Australia, you know, in the background. And as I said, you know, I'm both an ambassador, but I also do work with them, and we've made some real change there, I think. I'm also really passionate about kids. Kids, you know, I've got a very sporty kid. He does sport 6 days a week, which is why I got on the board of Sugar by Half, to be honest, because, you know, I see so many kids who have way too much sugar in their life. And this came about from me going off sugar, and I lost 14 kilos.
Wow.
Yeah. And the reason I went on it was because my cholesterol was really high. My dad's got diabetes. He had high cholesterol. There's heart attacks on both sides of the family. I thought, Far out. I've had cancer. My mum's died of ovarian cancer. Dad's heart attack. I don't need to have a bloody heart attack as well. And amazingly, my cholesterol has gone right down and is sitting where it should be. This is all from dropping sugar out of my diet. Cholesterol gone down, my thyroid, which I had for 14 years, I don't have to be on any medication. That's perfect again. I feel better. I feel better about myself, and I've got a lot more stamina to run after my child who is constantly doing sport. So that for me is really important. I want to help sugar by half, and I want to build things that make my heart sing.
That's so great, Stephanie. And the thing that was sort of swirling through my mind as you were describing the medical issues that you had, there seems to be an overwhelming amount of data that suggests that sugar combined, well, sugar in general is very destructive, but if you combine it with the metabolic issues of being overweight, and you don't need to be much overweight to be really badly affected.
No.
There's like, who's not to say that the cancer was spawned by the sugar and the weight, because they think that with a lot of, particularly like, as you know, this crazy carnivore diet that I'm on, which is virtually a zero carbohydrate, most cancers are metabolic disorder, as in they are fueled by the glucose that from the excess sugar. And there is some peripheral stuff about people healing and treating some cancers by using a therapeutic ketogenic diet. Some of the stuff they've done for epilepsy and a bunch of other things as well, including being able to reverse things like type 1 diabetes, which is some amazing groundbreaking stuff, right? So
yes.
Can you just share a little bit more about what Sugar by Half is and the message that we are trying to sort of promote, really, I suppose?
So, Sugar by Half is all about education and educating people about where we're consuming sugar. And it's not saying cut sugar out totally, although that would be the best outcome, but cutting it in half. Soft drinks. Sugar's in so many, tomato sauce, bread, things that we just don't know. So it's all about education. They've been doing some school education programs with Cool Australia that teachers can access. We're working with sporting clubs. We're just out there. I was appalled when my son was playing basketball and football. At the end of the game, you get a jelly snake. Why? Why do you get a jelly snake? Now, I'm really lucky. He has never drunk a soft drink. He doesn't like sugar, and that's a lot of, he's seen me and go through it, and I got him at a really good and impressionable time. Also, he's incredibly concerned about he uses his body as a machine because he's a young athlete. So he's probably on the other extreme. But sugar has so many, they call it worse than cocaine when they've done tests with rats, etc. And I can't talk to the medical aspect of that. That's Peter Brookie's world. But I certainly know that having cut sugar out for me, and that's not to say I've cut it out totally. Of course, I have it occasionally, but the main part, I am a much fitter and healthier human, and I will be around, I hope, for a lot longer for my son. And I think that's the important thing. From a health perspective, if we continue to eat as much processed food and sugar as we do, the health system and the health, it's just going to clog up. And I think in Medibank privates and all the insurance and GPs, they're all starting to work that out. If we actually invest in prevention, then we're going to have a much healthier society. And if we talk in dollar terms, it's going to save us a lot of dollars.
Exactly right. And I read something really fascinating last year, Stephanie, that the US health system was on track, or they were on track to spend 100% of their GDP on healthcare by the year 2039. And I don't know if you know how close it is, but it's 19 years away. And, and so if you think a pandemic like COVID-19 is a problem, wait until there's no money for anything else, right?
100%.
There's all the associated mental health issues. There's all the lost work, the productivity. Think about how much more productive you are now that you're 14, 16 kilos lighter. Like, it's no comparison. And as someone personally who has taken quite a lot of cocaine over the years, and hasn't done for the last about 4.5, I think, years now that I've been total teetotaler, giving up sugar was fucking way harder. And I loved cocaine. Don't worry about that. It's the last thing. It's out of all the vices.
I can talk to sugar, but surprisingly in the world that I was, that's the one thing I wasn't doing.
Well, I think you did well. I think, you know, I'm more than open to talk about it now because it's something.
No, which is great.
It's not about me anymore, you know. I'm actually midway through writing my very first book, Stephanie, and I talk. There's a chapter in there about one particular night where I got very, very drunk without eating any food and used cocaine to straighten me out, as I did many, many times, and it culminated in me being pursued by 6 police officers on foot down Burke Street in Melbourne. I'd been mistaken for someone that had coward punched someone. Ironically, a few weeks after I'd filmed a commercial for Step Back Think, which is an anti-coward punch campaign, and I gave.
I know I worked on that at AFL, so I know.
Oh wow! I didn't know that. And I gave the cops some lip after being booted out from the bar that I was in, and I ran off and I beat them. They pursued me in the divisional wagons, and I double back and I head down this alleyway, and then I was, you know, the megaphone came out, freeze, come out with your hands up, and I had guns and pepper spray and tasers pointed at me, and here I am handcuffed on my knees, in a humbling experience in my life. And I'm explaining to the police that I'm the face of this anti-violence campaign, and the 2 of them looking at on their phone on YouTube, and they released me without arresting me. And they eventually caught the person who was the perpetrator, driven by cocaine.
Gosh.
Yeah, and you know, that was like that. Okay, right. Okay, I can't do that anymore. Let's be a grown up now, Laven. But sugar. You know, emotional eating, eating up to like 2 liters of custard, plus a liter of ice cream at times, which is close to 10,000 calories. Like, it's incredibly.
I eat a block of chocolate. I still like a little bit of chocolate. I must say, but I just don't have it anywhere near as often. But I was still. It's a treat. It's not my everyday.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, isn't it? Like, if you can cut out all the soft drinks and the artificial sweeteners, which are just as terrible, you feel better and you're a more productive human, and you don't get as angry because your blood sugar's not spiking as much. And there's so many benefits that people don't even realise how negatively it's affecting them, cramming their.
Although my son might say that over the COVID period, the anger came back.
Well, I think if the worst thing you've done over this period, Stephanie, has gotten a little bit agitated at things, you'd be in the majority.
Correct.
But Stephanie, I'm very conscious of your time and the contribution you made today. And was there anything before we wrap this up that you'd like to share with the audience that they might take some benefit from?
I think when it comes to your health, trust your gut. I think that's a really important thing. Trust your gut. Enrich your soul with things that make your heart sing. And I know that sounds really naff, but do, because we're only here for a really short period of time. And there's, no time to waste. We need to do things that really give us joy. And I always say, look on the positive side, because there's always someone around the corner that is worse off than you. and be kind. And finally, respect. You know, I say that to my son all the time. If you have respect for yourself, your body, your health, your family, your friendship, everything else will fall into place.
No truer word was said. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie Bansemer-Brown,